The Nobel Peace Prize should probably be called the Participation Prize. What is Marxism? And let's talk about the police, not to be confused with the English rock band. Hey guys, I'm Jason Wesley, and this is not a podcast. Black Lives Matter has now been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. I guess anyone can get a Nobel Peace Prize now. Former President Obama got one in 2009 for not doing anything but being elected president, and even tried to get out of going. Prize motivation was for his extraordinary efforts to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperation between peoples. Geir Lundestad, director of the Nobel Institute for 25 years until stepping down last year, said the prize committee had expected the honor to deliver a boost to Obama, something he believes did not happen. Even many of Obama's supporters believe that the prize was a mistake. In that sense, the committee didn't achieve what it had hoped for, he said, noting that Obama himself rarely mentions the prize. Lundestad also claims the White House even used back channels to find out if the award could be accepted in absentia. His cabinet asked whether anyone had previously refused to travel to Oslo to receive the prize, Lundestad said. In broad strokes, the answer was no. BLM was nominated by Petter Eid, a Norwegian politician, member of parliament representing the Socialist Left Party. Other than George Soros giving over $100 million to Black Lives Matter, now that BLM is nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, it has many other people wondering why as well. But let's start back when BLM started with the hashtag Black Lives Matter on social media after the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the shooting death of Trayvon Martin 17 months earlier in February 2012. According to the BLM website, in 2013, three radical black organizers, Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi, created a black-centered political will and movement building project called hashtag Black Lives Matter. It was in response to the acquittal of Trayvon Martin's murderer, George Zimmerman. But the media got the story wrong from the start. Some of the media's major mistakes stemmed from stories that fit neatly into that widely accepted narrative. NBC News edited Zimmerman's comments during a phone call to inaccurately suggest that he volunteered that Trayvon Martin seemed suspicious because he was black. In fact, Zimmerman was responding to a question when he mentioned the teenager's race. The network apologized for the error. When it emerged that Zimmerman's mother was Peruvian, some news outlets took to referring to him with the rarely used phrase, white Hispanic, which is kind of like calling President Obama white black. There's a saying that says a lie believed is truth will affect you the same as if it were true. So if you believe a lie, it doesn't matter whether it's true or not, because you respond in kind to the lie as if it were true. So let's go on. Now, BLM founders said that they are trained Marxists.
That we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological theories.
Who was Karl Marx? Karl Marx, not to be confused with Carl Winslow, who once wrote, "My object in life is to dethrone God and destroy capitalism," wrote the Communist Manifesto. But what is Marxism? A body of doctrine developed by Karl Marx and, to a lesser extent, by Friedrich Engels in the mid-19th century. It originally consisted of three related ideas: a philosophical anthropology, a theory of history, and an economic and political program. There is also Marxism as it has been understood and practiced by the various socialist movements, particularly before 1914. Then there is Soviet Marxism as worked out by Vladimir Lenin and modified by Joseph Stalin, which under the name of Marxism-Leninism became the doctrine of the communist parties set up after the Russian Revolution. Offshoots of this included Marxism as interpreted by the anti-Stalinist Leon Trotsky and his followers, Mao Zedong's Chinese variant of Marxism-Leninism, and various Marxisms in the developing world. Yeah, that's Vladimir Lenin, not to be confused with Vladimir Putin. Under war communism, Lenin quickly nationalized all manufacturing and industry throughout Soviet Russia. He requisitioned surplus grain from peasant farmers to feed his Red Army. These measures proved disastrous. Under the new state-owned economy, both industrial and agricultural output plummeted. An estimated 5 million Russians died of famine in 1921, and living standards across Russia plunged into abject poverty. After the assassination attempt, the Cheka instituted a period known as the Red Terror, a campaign of mass executions against supporters of the Tsarist regime. Russia's upper classes and any socialist who weren't loyal to Lenin's Communist Party. By some estimates, the Cheka may have executed as many as 100,000 so-called enemies during the Red Terror between September and October 1918. Just like BLM leaders, also a Marxist, Joseph Stalin, who led the Great Purge. The Great Purge, also known as the Great Terror, was a brutal political campaign led by Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin to eliminate dissenting members of the Communist Party and anyone else he considered a threat. Although estimates vary, most experts believe believe that at least 750,000 people were executed during the Great Purge, which took place between about 1936 and 1938. More than 1 million other people were sent to forced labor camps known as gulags. In a 2016 Washington Post article, who was the biggest mass murderer in the history of the world? Most people probably assume that the answer is Adolf Hitler, architect of the Holocaust. Others might guess Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin, who may have indeed have managed to kill even more innocent people than Hitler did, many of them as a part of a terror famine that likely took more lives than the Holocaust. But both Hitler and Stalin were outdone by Mao Zedong. From 1958 to 1962, his Great Leap Forward policy led to the deaths of up to 45 million people, easily making it the biggest episode of mass murder ever recorded. According to a report, 93% of BLM protests were peaceful, which doesn't sound that bad, I guess, unless you're talking about coronavirus, in which case approximately 99% of the people that get it recover from it and live. There are 700,000 police officers in America, and according to the DOJ, over 10 million arrests each year. Now imagine if 93% of those 10 million arrests, of those interactions, turned violent, where law enforcement shot and killed someone. That would equate to 700,000 people unwarrantedly getting injured or killed by police. In 2019, there were a total of 235 black people shot to death by police. And according to the Washington Post database, in 2019, only 13 of those 235 were unarmed black people shot by police. Detractors will say that people like George Floyd wouldn't be considered in those numbers because he wasn't shot by police, but after many assertions and riots around the world that it was a pandemic of racism that led to his death, even though Officer Chauvin and George Floyd knew each other and worked security at the same nightclub, Chauvin was our off-duty police for almost the entirety of the 17 years that we were open. They were working together at the same time. It's just that Chauvin worked outside and the security guards were inside. Then after the body cam footage came out, we found that there was no evidence that race was a factor or motivation in his death, and Floyd claimed that he couldn't breathe long before he was ever on the ground.
I can't choke. I can't breathe. Please. I can't choke. I can't breathe. Please.
Officers asked him to get into the vehicle, and he claimed that he was claustrophobic, so the officer said that they would roll the windows down.
Stand up. Why are you doing me like this? Stand up. Come on. We're trying to get out of the street here so you don't get hit by a car. Stand up. Stop falling down.
I'm claustrophobic, man. Don't leave me by myself, man, please. I'm just claustrophobic. Yo, I'm gonna die here.
Take a seat.
I'm gonna die, man.
You need to take a seat right now.
And I just had COVID, man. I don't want to go back to that.
Okay, I'll roll the windows down. Hey, listen.
Dang, man.
Listen.
I'm not that kind of guy.
I'll roll the windows down and
Please,
you pull your
man.
legs in, all right? I'll put the air on.
I'm claustrophobic. I'm claustrophobic. I got anxiety. I don't want to do nothing to them.
I'll roll the window down.
And after an autopsy, according to a toxicology report, it found that he had a fatal level of fentanyl in his system. Baker said that Floyd's toxicology report showed that he had a fatal level of fentanyl under normal circumstances, and that if he were found dead at home alone and no other apparent causes, this could be acceptable to call an OD. Baker also said, "I'm not saying that this killed him." Now, I still have questions about that unfortunate situation, but rather than wait for the facts that came out, Black Lives Matter protests erupted across the country and across the world from May 26th to June 8th, 2080, and caused over $1 billion in riot damage. Similar outrage came after the Breonna Taylor case spread across mainstream media and social media and suddenly went silent when the body cam footage was finally released, and we heard her boyfriend say that it was Breonna that had the gun that shot the police.
No, we down 3 times police search warrant.
There's someone here dead?
Yeah, my girlfriend.
Who was shooting at us?
It was her house.
Who was shooting at us?
We have to go in if there's somebody
What is this about? We don't.
Dude, SWAT can come.
We're both
not
just
going in
regular
there.
workers.
Hey, boss.
Where is she at in the apartment?
She's on the ground.
Where at?
In the hallway.
What kind of gun did she shoot?
It's a
rifle
nine.
or
It's
a
the regular 9mm.
Did she shoot or you shoot
It
it?
was her. She was scared.
But since that didn't fit the particular narrative of outrage, the media ran with her boyfriend shot and Breonna was unarmed. That led people wanting to ban no-knock warrants, even though police said they announced themselves. While the department had gotten court approval for a no-knock entry to search for evidence of drugs or cash from drug trafficking, the orders were changed before the raid to knock and announce, meaning that the police had to identify themselves. But because of the political divisiveness largely pushed by Democrats and mainstream media outlets towards Republicans, BLM protesters still accosted Republican politicians like Senator Rand Paul walking back to his hotel in D.C. yelling, "Say her name."
Where
even though it was Senator Rand Paul that introduced the Justice for Breonna Taylor Act. After talking with Breonna Taylor's family, I've come to the conclusion that it's long past time to get rid of no-knock warrants. This bill will effectively end no-knock raids in the United States. BLM claimed that they wanted to defund the police and reduce police presence in minority communities, even though a Gallup poll in 2020 found that when asked whether they want police to spend more time, the same amount of time, or less time than they currently do in their area, most Black Americans, 61%, want the police presence to remain the same. This is similar to the 67% of all U.S. adults preferring the status quo, including 71% of white Americans. Even people like Tyler Perry in Atlanta was outspoken about the need for law enforcement.
And here's what I want you to understand, Anderson. Wrong, where there's wrong, I'm going to stand up against it. There are a lot of people in America who feel the way that I do. Right? I think we need the police. I know that I need the police. I have several that work for me here at the studio. We need them, but we need them reformed. We need them trained well. We need the right structure, right? But some of the things inside of defund the police, I really understand, like having officers who are clinically trained to deal with certain situations. I think all of those things are helpful. But taking money from the police department to make the police department smaller, that troubles me.
BLM protests were chanting things like defund the police, abolish ICE, F the police, F your Jesus, pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon, and then suddenly shifted from Black Lives Matter to Black Trans Lives Matter.
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
And then when defund the police wasn't polling well, they changed the verbiage to reimagine law enforcement. Now, we've seen this sleight of hand use of words and phraseology used in politics on many different occasions. So for example, rather than someone saying, I support abortion, they say, I'm pro-choice. I'm for a woman's right to choose, even though the opposite of life is death, not choice. We've also seen it used when people say, I believe in science. Well, who doesn't? I mean, science has helped us understand the differences between a biological male and a biological female. It's helped us understand the difference in mental illnesses and people suffering from gender dysphoria. Science has also helped us figure out that a baby's heartbeat starts between 5.5 and 6 weeks after gestation. But all of that falls right in line with the Biden administration's new pick for deputy spokesperson for the State Department, who said in a post in 2016, an unarmed black man takes a knee for justice, bigots riot. An unarmed black man with hands raised takes a bullet and dies. Those same bigots are silent. Explain this to me, please. The largest national threat to U.S. national security are U.S. cops, not ISIS, not Russian hackers, not anyone else or anything else. According to the Washington Free Beacon, the resurfaced comments could complicate the State Department's messaging as it seeks to challenge Iran's nuclear buildup, continue the fight against ISIS, and shape its response to the many ongoing national security threats posed by China, Russia, and the Islamic Republic. Now back to the Nobel Peace Prize nomination. President Trump negotiated actual peace in the Middle East between Israel and the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, many other countries that are coming on board, something that no one thought would happen, especially in the way that the Trump administration did it. Now, some conflicts under Clinton were Mogadishu, Somalia, Iraq, Bosnia, Afghanistan and Sudan, Kosovo and the former Yugoslavia. Some conflicts under Bush include the war in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Somalia. Obama launched airstrikes or military raids in at least 7 countries: Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, and Pakistan, and is the first 2-term president to have unbroken war all 8 years. Even political commentator L.Z. Granderson said in 2014 they voted for him because he was supposed to end these wars and stop bombing people. And when you look at the raw numbers, 3 times as much special forces were used than W. Twice as many strikes on countries that are predominantly Muslim. Those were not the numbers that his staunch progressive base voted for. President Trump is the only president in modern U.S. history that hasn't gotten America involved in any other foreign wars, simultaneously negotiating actual peace. I guess getting the Nobel Peace Prize is like getting a participation trophy in 2021, as long as you're participating in virtue signaling in the woke cancel culture.
Will you be mine?